Hello and welcome to the tutorial series where we answer business questions using SQL. For this tutorial series, we are using the Northwind database, which we have already downloaded and loaded in our PostgreSQL. We are using pgadmin for doing all our interactions with the database. The scenario that we have is related to sales performance analysis. We are given a business request. Identify customers who have placed more than 5 orders and show me their order count along with the earliest and most recent order dates. Whenever you receive a request like this, the first step is to analyze this business question and understand it. So let's understand our business question. Here we are specified that we need to identify customers who have placed more than 5 orders. And we need to show their order count along with the earliest and most recent order dates. So this may seem quite a lot at first glance, but now that we have highlighted the important elements of this question, we can move forward to step number 2 and see which tables do we need, which columns do we need, and which processing do we need to perform. So let's go to our pgadmin and see which tables are there and which tables do we need for answering this specific question. So now we are at our pgadmin and we have our Northwind database. As we can see that we are talking about customers and we are talking about orders. So let's start with looking at the customers table and see what information we can extract from there. So under Northwind, we go to schemas and under public, we have our tables. And here we can see that we have information about customers. So here is a customer related table. And then we have another table related to orders, further order details, and so on and so forth. Let's start by looking at customers and see what do we have there. You can look at the columns and here we see that we have the customer ID, customer name, contact name, and so on and so forth. We can do a quick glance by right-clicking on customers table and viewing or editing the first 100 rows. This way we will be able to see what exactly do we have in the customer's data. We have the customer ID, we have company name, contact name, title, address, city, region, and so on and so forth. Of course, we don't have any order related information. So let's have a look at our orders table and see what do we have there. So in the orders table, we have 14 columns and we can glance through these columns over here. Order ID, customer ID, order date is here, and these are the things that we need. So basically, if we look at our business question, the information that we need, customers placing orders, their order count, and their dates, this information can be retrieved by using these two tables, the orders table and the customers table. So we have identified the answer to our first question. Which are the tables that we need? That the two tables that we need are the customer table and the order table. Just to be sure of the spelling, we have customers and orders, not customer and order. So customers and orders. These are the two tables that we will need. Let's now move to step number 3. Whenever you are starting to write your query, you start by identifying the tables, which we just did, and you use the from clause. And since there are two tables that we are talking about, so we need to join these two tables. So let's go ahead and do that. So I will now start a query tool. I can right click on the tables and initiate the query tool. And let's take it step by step. Let's see what happens if I just select everything from, from these tables. So for example, if I select everything from customers table, am I able to execute this query on my tool or not? Yes, I am. And in a similar way, if I select everything from orders table, am I able to execute this or not? Yes, I am. So at least my syntax is working correctly. Now we think about it, which are the, how do we combine these two tables? I want to see everything from both customers and orders. And for this, you actually use joins. So you want to have primarily customers, and let's also give it an alias so that every time we don't need to write customers as a whole, rather we can just use C as a short form. And now let's combine the orders table with it. You include join, and you specify the table name, and you specify the alias for this as well. So this means from now on, moving forward, we can use C for customers and O for orders. And how do we want to combine them? You specify that using on. What is the common variable between customers and orders? It is the customer ID. Customer ID is something which is available, as you can see here, in customers as well as in orders. So we specify that join customers and orders using customer ID. So you specify that C dot customer ID, and that should be equal to O dot customer ID. Let's run this and see if our two tables are joined. And here we see all the customer related information. And when we scroll further to the right, we see the corresponding order information as well. So for example, the customer ID Vinit here and the customer ID Vinit here is the same, and all the information for that corresponding row is now embedded over here. So now with this bigger table, with this joint table, we will be able to access not only the customer information, rather also the order information. So with this, we have completed our step number 3, which is to start with join and from. What's next? Next, you specify which columns you need to use for display. How are you going to represent the information? Which columns you need to select? For this, we go back to our understanding of the question. We need to specify customers. And by customer here, we can see that we would need not just customer ID, because these IDs, Vinit, Tom SP, HANAR, these do not make sense. Company names are actually much more important to represent and understand from a business point of view. So let's select customer ID and company name. So here, instead of specifying everything, we specify that we would like to have the customer ID. And of course, customer ID is coming from our customers table, which is represented by C. So we say C dot customer ID. And we also need the customer company name. That would be C dot company name. Let's quickly run this and see if we are able to extract these two pieces of information. And when we run this, yes, we are able to see only the customer ID and company name. But we cannot stop here. We need more information as well. We need to identify order information and the date information as well. and we need to count how many orders are being placed. So, which means that we need to have the order count as well. For this, we can do some aggregation, and here we can add an aggregation formula count. And what do we want to count? We want to count all the order IDs. So you can specify O dot order ID. You can either stop here, just type count of order ID, but it might be a good idea to also give it an alias so that it's understandable for our business team, and also it's easier to use later on. So for example, in order to saying count of order ID all the time, it's better to say total orders. What else do we need? We need the minimum date and the maximum date. Minimum date means the date of first order, and maximum date would refer to the date of most recent order. And as you know, you can apply min and max to the dates as well. That's the beauty of SQL. So we can have min of O dot order date. As we can see here, we have a column order date. And again, it makes sense to give it an alias as first order. And similarly, max of O dot order date as most recent order. Before we proceed, let's run this and see if it actually works. And it doesn't. This is a surprise because before we added these count, min, and max variables, our customer ID and customer name was correctly being specified. It means that something happened when we added these. And here is a hint which is also telling us that the customer ID must appear in the group by clause by or be used as an aggregate function. Before I go into this detail, let's quickly check one thing. What happens if I simply remove this customer ID and company name and only try to execute the count, min, and max function? So if I run this right now, I see something interesting. I see a total orders which is coming out to be 830. So it means that the number of total orders is 830. The absolute first order was placed in 1996 on 4th of July, or it could be 7th of April. We don't know. We need to know, but right now can't guess. And the last order, most recent order, was placed in 1998. But now what we want to see is we want to see for each individual company or customer, when did they place their first order, when did they place their last order, and how many orders did they place. Now coming back to this error that we are getting. There is a very specific reason why we are getting this error, and it is because for customer ID and customer name, we are using our raw variables. For order ID and order date, we are using aggregations. Now I want you to remember a very important rule of SQL. Any variable which is occurring in select, either it has to be aggregated, like here, count, min, max of order ID, order date, or it has to be part of group by. So since count, min, and max are there, which are aggregating order ID and order date, so we don't need these to be included in group by. But since customer ID and customer name are not aggregated, so we need to include them in the group by clause. So here you should specify a group by clause. which will specify that I want to group customer ID and I want to group company name. Let's run this again. And we have some kind of results. What we see here is that our customer ID and company names are grouped together, and we can see how many orders did they place and the date of their first order and the date of their last order. And now we can see that, okay, this is year, month, and day. So for example, Tom's specialist at Peyton, they placed 6 orders in total. The first order was placed on 5th of July 1996, and the last order was placed on 23rd March 1998. So far, so good. But this is still not enough. What's next? Have a quick look at our business question. We want to identify customers. This is something that we did. Who have placed more than 5 orders. This is not something that we did. And show me their order count. Yes, we got it. Along with the earliest and most recent order days. That's we already have as well. So only thing which is missing here is uh, checking if they have placed more than 5 orders. So we come back here and we see indeed we are seeing some customers who placed only 5 orders, and we are seeing them as well in the list. So we need to make sure that we filter them out. And that's the step which comes next. After we are done with tables, joining, determining the select columns, we have applied the group by as well. Now we want to filter and using having. Now the question is, why having and why not where? So the first thing that comes to our mind is to apply a where clause like this. So give me orders where the count of order ID or total orders is more than 5. Okay, so one thing could be total orders is greater than 5. That's something that we could do. However, this is not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work is because where cannot work if you have group by. And for this, we need to have having. So having total orders more than 5. We again get an error, but this maybe you notice the arrow is over here over total orders and not at having. So having is not the problem. The problem is that total orders does not exist. The reason being total orders is part of select and having is executed before select, which means that total orders does not exist right now. So if we want to do this check, we need to have our count in its raw form. So instead of total orders, just put count of order ID. We will have a look at this in a minute again. But now that we run this, you can see that anything which was below 5 or equal to 5 is not there. All the orders which are in the list are only above 5. It might be a good idea to apply a limit, and it will also be a good idea to sort these elements because it doesn't make sense to show a randomly created table with no order. So let's give it an order. So let's order by, and you can again order by the count of order ID. And we can specify that we want to do it in descending order. And if we run this, we have the highest number of order first, and then it goes in descending order. You may also want to limit this to a specific value because the business team might not be interested in all low number of orders. They might be interested in the top customers. So maybe we can limit this to 10. And if we run this right now, it shows us the top 10 customers with their order numbers. We have their company names. We have the dates when there were first order placed and when the most recent order was placed. And here I want to show you one little thing as well, which is if I replace this total orders over here and run it now, it still works. So why was total orders not working for having, and why is it working for order? And this is important to know, that in which order a query is executed. So let's have a quick look of order execution in SQL. Whenever SQL receives a query, it starts by the from clause. So first of all, it picks the table, the customers, and if there is any kind of join that is needed, then it joins it. So we know which tables are we talking about. Once we have the tables, then it proceeds to doing any kind of grouping that exists. So it doesn't matter if you write it first or write it later on, but after it knows the tables, SQL will look at which columns need to be grouped. Once the grouping happens, then the filter is applied using having. And then we know, okay, from these groups, we need to filter only those rows which have this specific count. Then comes select. And that's the reason when we were using group by or when we were using having, select was not executed at that time. Since select was not executed, so total orders did not exist at that time. In select, it is now picking up which columns to show. And last but not least, the order is executed. So then it picks up, okay, out of those columns, when I display them, in which order should I display? And that's basically it. What we have just done is to take a business question related to sales performance and answered it using SQL. For more such scenarios for answering business questions using SQL, stay tuned.